Okay, we are live and recording. So welcome. It's our first Monday, and just a real quick reminder, it's not required to be on any of the live webinars. And one of the things I'm thinking about trying in this course is Wednesdays are kind of hit or miss. So when I send out the email tonight after I've posted this, you'll receive a link to this class recording. I'll attach a PDF version of the PowerPoint that goes along with the discussion for this class. And then I'm also going to see if I can find out who's going to be available on the Wednesdays. And for this Wednesday, remember there's no live class this Wednesday. I'll be sending a recording of the previous classes or course for that class. And then I'm also going to ask who can make it on the Wednesdays. It won't make it a requirement, but it just sort of gives me an idea if anybody will be on the live class. Our last class, there were very few people on the Wednesday, and that's not uncommon. So so no harm or foul. We do this however you like, and so my job is to make sure that that I'm delivering the material. If at any point you find, wow, this is going way over my head, reach out to me immediately and let's talk, or whenever you get to the point where you're kind of feeling overwhelmed and whatever. And I'm absolutely committed to each and every one of you to deliver the course to the level you're at, and so that what you can get, what you want out of the course, we can deliver. All right. Conversely, at the other extreme of this, using critical thinking, there are some people that are going, you know what, I'm way beyond this. I need something more challenging and more difficult, and I can help deliver that also. The worst thing in the world is to wait till the course is over and then say, you know what, I didn't get what I needed and whatever. Let me know as soon as you sort of have an idea, and we'll be glad to set up calls. The other thing is, and it might take a few weeks before you figure out if we're over or under your level of expertise. The other thing is that I invite everybody taking the course to set up a call with me, like in a couple of weeks after we get through the preliminary stuff. And also, if you're using this course to launch a new business or start a winery, or you're operating a winery and want to help to improve your business and profitability, if you're taking the course because you're looking for a job or looking to find out what kind of career opportunities there are, if you're already in the wine business but want to improve your standing and add value to your own credentials, if you will. And also, if you're taking the course because you're involved in the Wine and Spirits Education Trust or Society of Wine Educators or Master of Wine program, I'll set up a call with each and every one of you to discuss your personal goals and how we can customize the class also in certain ways for different people who have different reasons for taking the course, okay? Any questions about that, Louis, Rachel, or Daniel? All right. And before we kind of launch into tonight's program, anybody have any troubles getting to information or logging in anywhere? Everybody pretty good as far as where you need to be right now?
Yes.
All right. So one of the things I do want to point out, if we're using the Facebook page so that we can have a discussion forum that is actually workable. If you don't use Facebook, or if you have not received an invitation to join this private group, remember, nobody can see this outside of the members of the class, and I have to approve everybody. You can only join if you've been given an invitation and accepted it. Sometimes people sign up for the class with an email that's different from what they signed up for their Facebook account. If you have not received the invitation to join the Facebook group, let me know, and let's figure out what happened. Or if you don't use Facebook, let me know, and let's figure out a workaround. But we find that this is a really good platform for exchanging information. And we've got a few of you, Sylvia and Mara, have already introduced themselves. I want everybody to log in this week, and hopefully in the next couple days, join the group. And I've only got 3 people out of the 8 in the class that have joined. And then tell us who you are and whatever, just comment on this post. And it gives everybody a kind of a chance to understand who else is in the class, what are other people trying to get out of it. And then over the course of the class, I'll be posting a few things, but this discussion forum is primarily for you guys. And I'll say this over and over again, this is a broken record warning, and that is, what you get out of the class is going to be in direct proportion to how much work you put into the class. There's not a lot of busy work. There are not quizzes. There are not things. You'll have a few projects to turn in. If you turn them in, you get credit. If you don't turn them in, you don't get credit, okay? And hopefully those have been pretty clear. And as we go, I'll reiterate what the requirements for completion are. It was in the Wednesday class lecture, and it's in the materials, okay? So any question about the Facebook page? All righty then. Okay, so as I've discussed before, the syllabus for the course is systematically going through the wine business from the ground up. And here it is, and broken down into 4 two-week sections. And so where we are right now is section 1, which is weeks 1 and 2. And we're going to create a financial workbook for a $25 red wine, okay? Tonight we're going to talk about the business of grapes, and that section of the cost of goods workbook. And then remember that the purpose of this course is to break apart a lot of the cliches, a lot of the misunderstandings about decisions that are made in the wine business versus how we view things as a wine enthusiast or having a passion in wine, all right? So tonight we're going to talk about the business of grapes. Wednesday, we're going to focus more on the business of production. And then we're going to move into different production options and different business decisions about how wine is actually made, different licensing, different options that are more or less capital intensive, those kind of things. And then when we do section 2, we're going to use a different type of a workbook. Now they give all these pop-up things. I got to figure out how to make them go away. Then when we get to section 3, that'll be weeks 5 and 6. We're going to go into marketing, sales, distribution, import, export, wine clubs and tasting rooms. And then in the final 2 weeks, you're going to work on your final projects, which I'll explain what those are. and we'll go over how that works, okay? So that's the overview. At the bottom of the page, as we go down, there's things to read and see. Is you're going to have a link, and when you click on this, it's going to take you to some articles and great contracts and so forth. And so let me get to that page. Oh, now they've got my settings. I'm expired. So anyways, you want to click on that. You should be in the course. But anyways, when you click on that, you'll see required reading for this section. Okay. Again, we don't use a textbook because I really work hard to keep the materials and the information up to date and current, and it changes so quickly. All right. Any questions about that? Okay, so what I want to do today is go through how the workbooks, what we call the WineBizSim financial calculators, you should have received an email with a password. And again, if you cannot get into this site, if you can't find the password, and let me know immediately, I'll get it handled. If you know you're signed up and whatever, you can also try the forgot your password function and put in your email address, and it'll send you a new password real quickly. But either way, make sure you can get into this. Don't delay on this because it's a critical part of the course. All right, so I put in my email address, I put in my password, and I sign in, and I get to a page that looks like this, okay? With this pull-down menu, there are a number of different workbooks, and you get access to all of these workbooks for a period of 1 year, all right? The one we're really going to be focusing on to begin with is the Winery Cost of Goods Workbook. Again, for anybody who's looking for specialized information or higher level kind of things, we've got other workbooks that you can go in and play with. But at this point in the course, you want to find the Winery Cost of Goods Workbook and click on it. You then want to go up here and hit New. And then this is what you should see on your screen, okay? Now, this is really important. It was in the directions, and again, anybody has a problem with this, let me know. What you need to know is your workbook is saved on our server, not on your computer. And the first thing you need to do when you start a new workbook is select Save. And when I hit Save, you're going to see this information change up in the URL, all right? And it's given a new URL. I'm going to go into bookmark this page because it's this URL that's going to get you back to your workbook, all right? So we're going to go there. I am going to name this $25 red blend, and then I'm going to put the date on it, 4/1/19, okay? And then I've got a folder. If you really get into this, and you'll be able to create a lot of different scenarios and workbooks. I'm going to put this into what I call my WineBizSim projects. I've got a folder for it. And then I am going to hit Save, okay? So that's now saved. If I want to work on a different computer, I need to copy this URL up here and email it or message it to myself so that when I go on the other computer, I log in the same fashion, but then I need to cut and paste this up in the URL to get back to my workbook. Does that make sense for everybody? So now I can put in the wine name. Now notice when I put my cursor over this, it's giving me the no, no, no. You can't do that. That just simply means I'm not in the edit mode, so I need to click edit up here at the top, okay? So that's how you're going to create your workbook. Later, I'm going to show you that once you save it, you're going to be able to download it as a PDF, and then that's how you're going to turn in your project. So that's the bad news. The good news is I hope you're going to find this really fun. We like to think of it as kind of a form of graphics deficient Farmville, because what you get to do, it's completely filled in already for you. You are not expected to know the numbers that go in here, but if you're planning to make a wine, you can actually use this to create your financial of a real wine. If you are a winemaker and want to get a better handle on what goes into the cost of goods and profit or loss from a certain wine, you would want to use this. And as an educational resource, it really accurately reflects what the variables are that at the end of the day determine whether a wine is profitable or if it's not. All right. So then what I can do is I can go, the wine name, I could call this Tim's Red Blend. And this is Timbo's Winery. And I want to put in a date so that I know when I started my project. And my name's Tim. There we go. And I'm off to the races. Now, as we go through this, and we're going to talk primarily again about the business of grapes, what you'll find is you've got tabs for your grape costs, for your cost of production, for if it's a barrel-aged wine, all the variables. And I think you're going to find this really fascinating, because a lot of people that actually are winemakers don't really even consider all of the costs associated with barrel aging and so on. We'll look at costs associated with cellaring and storing wine, including just simply, I was on a call with a company in China that I consult for, and they say, well, we're having the wine produced, do we have to take it all at once? And the answer was no. We can find licensed warehouse space, temperature controlled, and you can count on, depending on the quantity that you need stored, they charge anywhere from 15 cents to 50 cents per month per case. And they're like, oh, okay, this can add up really quick. It seems like pennies, but boy, it can add up quick. All right, so that's in here. Packaging and bottling, what goes in the cost, not only of the bottle and the corks and the labels and the boxes and that, but how much does it cost to actually run and operate your bottling line, to use a mobile bottling service? What additional costs are involved? These are things like, they're called changeover fees, because you want to bottle your Cabernet in this bottle and with that label, and then you want to bottle your Chardonnay or your Viognier or your Pinot Noir or your White Zin or whatever it is, and then you've got to actually pay to change that over. A changeover fee on a major winery, high-speed bottling line, the cost of just simply changing it over can be over $100,000 just because you're going to run a different wine, and even far beyond that. In some instances, it approaches $250,000. Now you're on a high-speed bottling line, so that's that much money applied to millions of cases of wine. But it's, again, something most people never even consider. We're going to then give a complete cost breakdown. Oh, and then there's a pricing formula in here that I'm not sure why that is showing up, but it says hide. Pay no attention to the man in the mirror. Actually, you can go in there and actually play with that, but we'll get there later. Okay, so this is the whole layout, and that's how you create and save a project. And again, you're going to be asked to make a $25 red wine. Now, if you notice, the price of my wine is $27.62. How do I get that price down? Well, the answer is if this is the price your winery is selling it for, this price is calculated based downstream on a wholesaler or distributor purchasing the wine, all the costs of transportation and all that. They've got the distributor marks it up. They sell it to a store or a restaurant, and the store or restaurant marks it up. And so this is just an estimated cost. We're going to have a separate workbook for all the things I just went through. But the real thing that's going to make a difference in your selling price on the shelf is going to be our FOB or ex-seller's price. So this is the price that we actually sell the wine for. And if I bump this price down, I want you to watch the bottle price on the shelf is going to come down, but so is our margin because we're going to be making less money. So reduce this cost. Watch as I bump this down. And as I get to that $25 mark, holy crap, how much? To get to $24.99, I'm making less than $60,000 margin on this wine. Let me go back up to what it was before at 133. All right, and then when I plug that in, watch this number down here. So my decision to lower my selling price at the winery to get it down to that price, all right, I've had to lower my selling price from 133, so a $14 cut in my selling price, and that cost me $40,000 on my 3,000 case production. Does that make sense? And again, we're gonna go over this several times, and the thing I want you to get is go in and play with this. Go in and see, all right, well, if I do something differently there, how can I make up to it? Because let's say that our target's $100,000 and we're now less than $60,000. All right, we're going to go into the business of grapes. And up here, you're going to see your cost of goods. This is what it costs me to make this wine, including the grapes and the production and barrels and cellar and storage and everything else. My margin's $20 a case, and that times my 3,000 cases is 58,000. All right, so in the workbook for the grapes, all right, so this is the second tab, S2, and this is grape costs. And what you're able to do here is determine, all right, I'm making a 50-50 blend of Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. And my total cost of the grapes, because I'm doing 50-50 at this cost per ton of each, then my total cost of grapes is $2,000. All right, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. If I'm looking at my gross margin here, and I can figure out a way to lower my cost of grapes, let's say that I say, you know what, I need to work with the vineyard to lower our costs, or I need to work with whoever I'm buying my grapes from. I need I need to get that cost down to $2,000 a ton. And then you can see what would that do to my gross margin. I'm going to go ahead and enter that. All right, I recouped a little bit. So I'm back up over 60,000. So I made another $5,000 a ton. And here's what I really want you to get in the critical thinking. People think of wine blending as this artisanal thing and a little soupçon of this and a little bit of this. We're going to do a blending exercise, and you'll actually have an opportunity to recreate a real blending thing. But here's what's going on when the finance person is sitting with the winemaker and sitting with the vineyard person. Or if it's all one person, it's what's going on in their head. Well, you know, all right, so what if we could, since these grapes are more expensive, what if we changed our blend to be 40% of that because it's more expensive grapes, and then 60% of this? Oh, okay, we made a little bit more, but we're really going to have to do something about our grapes here, because we're just not making enough money doing this. Now, we're going to have other things that we can change downstream here. But you really need to know that grapes are a business first and foremost. And anybody who's been to one of these blending exercises where they give you the different grape varieties and you get to make your own blend and see what tastes better, that is a minor part of the real story of what goes on in Bordeaux, or what goes on in wineries in Paso Robles or Okanagan Valley where I am today, or whatever. It's really a series of business decisions, and that if I really want to get this back up to $100,000, maybe what I'm going to have to do is figure out, okay, I've got to get this down to $1,600, and I've got to work really hard with my grape contracts and everything else. Now I'm up to 7,200. Then you got to think, well, I know I really want a classic Bordeaux blend, but there's all these other red blends that are out there, and I know that Syrah right now is completely devalued. There was a great deal of overplanting. There's a lot of really great Syrah that's available. So what would happen if I went in here and picked out Syrah? All right. And what if I could get my Syrah for $1,200 a ton? And then what I'm going to do is make my blend 25% of that. And then I'm still at 100%. That's where I need to be, okay? Or I'm sorry, 125. So I'm gonna knock this down, let's say another 10%, and I'm going to take 15% off of my Merlot. Okay, oops, I took too much. All right. All right, this needs to equal 100%, and all of a sudden we made another $5,000. So this is the business. Now, also, I want you to think all the way downstream. What does this do to your marketing? What does this do to your value proposition? And so when you're ideating a wine, when a winery is saying, well, what are we going to make? How are we going to make profitability and so forth? If you decide, you know what, at 25 bucks, it's going to be really hard to be profitable with a classic Bordelaise thing. What if we actually went in and found really killer Petite Syrah? And maybe you could get that at 900 bucks a ton. And we're going to blend it with Zinfandel. And as you're going into stores, as you're going into restaurants, this is what I want you to be looking for on the shelves. If you can go online, if you're in a restaurant, or if you're in a winery, and think why this blend And very often why this blend was because the business proposition of it was the only way they could make money, all right? So we've gone in and radically changed now our wine, and we're exceeding our target for gross margin. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? All right, so let me transition into a presentation about the business. And again, we're going to have a lot of time to play with this. I really just want you to go in and play, have fun with this, all right? And when people think about grapes, you know, we think about terroir, and most people, terroir just means territory. It doesn't come from the word soil. It actually comes from the word land, like the land of the free and the home of the brave. So actually terroir just means territory. So it's the soil and the climate and the people and the economy. A huge part of the terroir of Napa Valley. I can explain the terroir of the Napa Valley, and it's this, okay? And you've got so much more in terms of value of the crop and characteristics and cost of the land, and it's all part of the territory, okay? Yeah. But the business of grapes, let's just kind of go through it. There are so many considerations of the real estate and land values, the business behind winery transactions, and whether a vineyard's going to be profitable is an awful lot dependent on when are you purchasing, at what price, how are you setting up and establishing the business of your business. Do you have loans, and do you have interest to pay on it, or do you have investors that expect a return on investment, those kind of things? Or is it something that your family passed down to you, or whatever? The legal services that are involved, and this is things like environmental impact reports, and making sure that that you legitimately are able to grow the grapes in a region. Contracts, leases, vineyard consulting, preparing the land, all the hardware and the trellising and this and that, the treatments, pesticides, machinery, labor, insurance, and so forth. Now, I just got in my inbox literally a few minutes ago. I'm going to send you all a copy of Wine Business Monthly, and I want every one of you to go through the online version. It's free, and it'll come up on your computer. I want you to go in and look at the ads for the businesses that service the business of grapes, okay? The different harvesters and machineries and testing and netting and things that chase away rodents and birds, or people who supply, you know, solutions if you want to put owls in the vineyards and stuff like this. And all of this really, really plays into the business and ultimately the cost and the quality of grapes. One of the hardest things to do learning about wine business is differentiating between truth and what is otherwise known as bullshit. There is so much crap available, and that you're actually taught, oh, our struggling vines and the low yield and the blah, 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 blah. That's nice. That's a great story for marketing, but we're talking about business. This is actually a picture of my TV, and I was able to put it on pause. This was after the Napa earthquake a number of years ago, and this was on Channel 4 in San Francisco. And after the earthquake, they ran this piece that the earthquake was so bad, it knocked the grapes off of the vine. This is called crop thinning. If the grapes were not off the vine, they would be under here. They wouldn't be down the center of the row. This is a practice, a very expensive practice, where you go through and you may determine you've got too many grapes that are on the vine, and the vine system won't support ripening that many grapes. So literally, you go through and typically will throw on the ground anywhere from a couple to 10% of your profit. If you ever see a practice like this, and you're in a winery or a vineyard or in a class, you go, wow, what the heck did that do to the cost of my grapes? And how did that affect my bottom line? Now, first of all, you got to differentiate that this is fertilizer, and actually quite literally, because they'll go through and disc this into the ground to naturally compost it. But it's also BS that the earthquake was responsible for this, okay? And as you're going through then, as you start to understand the roles and responsibilities in a wine business, it's going to help your critical thinking, so you can say, okay, let's look at something, and let's say it's crop thinning. So let's get past the fertilizer, and here's a practice where the winemaker, let's say, goes to the vineyard manager or to the vineyard that's under contract for the grapes and says, you know, I'm tasting the grapes, I'm looking at ripeness. This vineyard or this block, you know, is it a small part, is it a big part? We really need to go through and thin the crop. I don't feel we're going to get the quality I need for my wine unless we take this position, okay? And then the finance person comes in and says, whoa, 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 hang on a second. If we throw away 10% of the crop, you're not going to get a bonus. Your operations and your cellar and winery crew aren't going to get bonuses. As a matter of fact, we're running thin already. So are you sure you really want to make that financial decision to do this? And then marketing may chime in and says, you know, this is a great story. So why don't we see if we can have a price increase to accommodate being able to do this for the extra quality, and then we'll write this in as part of, you know, sometimes we actually go through and we're forced to throw fruit on the ground because we're looking for that intensity and that balance and whatever. And again, these are the real life conversations that go on in the wineries when a decision like this is being made. It's not just willy-nilly, all right? And it's getting to the point, and let's talk again about critical thinking. If I'm a grower and I'm selling to a winery, and it might be the highest quality fruit, it might be just basic stuff, all right? And the winery comes to me and says, you know, we talked to the winemaker, and the winemaker has asked you to pull 10% of your fruit. You better go back to your contract. Now remember, on the Napa Valley Wine Academy site, there is a grape contract that is a document that goes through all of the key things that are stipulated in a grape contract. And one of them would be a provision that if the contractee comes back and says, I want you to do this in the vineyard, and let's say that this is a Napa vineyard and it's $6,000 a ton or $8,000 a ton, and the winemaker comes and says, oh great, I want you to go through and throw 10% of your crop on the ground. What are you going to do? Well, hopefully you're going to go to the contractor, you're going to say, wait a minute, I'm glad to take 10% of the crop and throw it on the ground. And that means that I'm going to raise your price commensurately. So instead of $8,000 a ton, we're going to be at $8,800 a ton. And that's in the contract. And then it's like, oh, do I really want to do this? It's gotten so bad, the relationship between the wineries and the growers. The wineries keep coming back to me and saying, "Hey, Tim, we love your fruit, love this, but we want you to throw 10% of your profit away. We want you to also, we need more hang time." And how many times have you ever thought of hang time as actually a financial decision? Because if you can get away with it and get me to hang it longer, the grapes are actually going to start to dehydrate, and the crop will become lighter as the water evaporates. And I can even add water back in at the winery. It's true. You can just put a hose in and add it back. All right, and if you manage everything correctly, you could really screw good old Tim the grower, because you're having me do these things. So here's what's happening in the business of grapes. Gee, Tim, we really like the quality of your fruit. We love it. We'll even, and don't forget, this is not just inexpensive, box wines and $2 chuck. We're talking about grapes that sell for thousands and thousands of dollars a ton. And you come back to me and said, "Tim, okay, here's what we want you to do. We want you to go through and do these procedures, at Bloom. We want you to do green harvesting and eliminate some of the potential crop early. We'll probably come back through later and do some crop thinning. And then we really are looking for this level of ripeness, and they're telling me a level of ripeness that can only be achieved by dehydration and not by maturation." The growers are getting so fed up, they say, "Fantastic. I normally get 5 tons per acre off of this vineyard. I get $8,000 a ton, and so that means my gross income is $40,000 per acre. I'll do whatever you want, but you're responsible that whatever comes off of this, I'm going to charge you $40,000 per acre, regardless of what the yield is." Now, what this means is, if you take the $8,000 a ton and you remove some percentage for green harvesting, and you take some other fruit off because you want to crop thin and then dehydrate it, all of a sudden I'm losing out. So I'm going to fundamentally, as a grower, I'm going to lease you whatever acreage you need. You tell me exactly what to do, but I'm charging you as if it were $40,000 that I'm going to get for the fruit that comes off of here. Does that make sense? So the business of grapes has really seen a lot of transformation over the years, and how pricing is created. Now, on Wednesday, we're going to go through something called the Grape Crush Report. And it's also, there's a link of it on the Napa Valley Wine Academy site. The Grape Crush Report is a nearly 200-page document of every single legal grape transaction in California. Now, there are other versions of similar kind of reports, but none that has anywhere near the unbelievable amount of detail and information. You will find, when you go to the Napa Valley and look up Cabernet Sauvignon, you will see transactions for Napa Cabernet Sauvignon at $1,000 a ton. And if you go all the way to the end, you'll see all these transactions, and sometimes for a fraction of a ton, sometimes for hundreds of tons, and so forth. When you get to the end, you will see some people paid $1,000 a ton for Napa Cabernet. Other people paid $35,000 a ton. And actually, if you start to learn enough about this, you would know the $35,000 a ton transactions are Andy Beckstoffer's To Kalon Vineyard being sold to just a couple of clients for Tor. My friend Tor Kenward, I worked with him at Behringer. He actually hired me years ago. But you can actually start to understand, oh, wow, that must have been Gallo. This must have been Delicato. This must have been this and that, okay? So really think about that, and then think, what's the business of grapes if you're a seller versus a buyer or your own grower? What's the conventional way that business was done? What's the new thinking and the new ways, and how are people adapting to the new requirements for grapes and grape qualities? What's the difference in thinking about yield and quality and so on if you're a wine enthusiast versus a wine businessman? And then finally, if you can, starting to think of the different roles in the business, the winemaker versus the CFO or finance and sales and whatever, okay? Any questions about that?
Well, Tim, I have a quick question.
Please.
So you mentioned the Grape Crush report, but is that a good place to go? Does that talk about the basic value of different varietals of grapes per ton? So just for our exercises, how can we find out easily what a ton of Cabernet costs versus Petit Syrah, just for exercises?
So when we go in, and we'll go over this on Wednesday. Actually, let me see if I can get to the Grape Crush report. For anybody who couldn't find it, all you have to do is go Grape Crush report, and you'll want, oops, I got my Caplex on. You want 2018. All right, so this would be for last year. And it's put out by the United States Department of Agriculture. And again, you know, if you're in Virginia, if you're in Okanagan, if you're in upstate New York, or if you're in the rural parts of New York City near JFK, like Lewis, I don't know of anyone else that actually does this in as much detail. Oh, and you know what? The 2018 is not available because of the government shutdown. They're still trying to do that. So go to the 2017 down here. All right. And if I select PDF, this may take just a second to load because it's a big document. And this thing is so much cool information if you're into that kind of stuff. All right. So as you can see, it's 160 pages, and you're going to be able to, the first thing you'll want to do is there's a key to this. So for example, if we wanted to use Napa, we need to look for number 4. I'll show you how that works. And so, and it'll tell you here that 4 is Napa County, all right? And you can then compare it against Amador, Lake County, Sonoma, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's going to be a ton of info about all sorts of stuff here. And average prices, how much red, how much white, how much grapes for table grapes, how much for raisins, the crop year and different types and whatever. So anything you can imagine about grape prices, you'll be able to find in this, all right? Now, what I'm gonna get to, notice I've gone to about page 63 here. And let me back up just a few pages. Chronologically, you'll see I'm in District 3 here. Can you see that over there, Daniel?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. So at some point, and they'll give you what pages to look for. We're going to get all the way through District 3. Don't look at the screen. I'll tell you when to look because I'll give you a headache otherwise, I've learned. All of a sudden, I'm going to come across District 4 wine grapes white. And it's going to start with, on the next column over, Albarino. It's now going to be alphabetical. It's going to show me that somebody sold 12.6 tons, oops, for $3,059. Somebody else had 14 tons at $42.99, but it'll show you there were 4 Albarino transactions in the Napa Valley in 2017. Arnace, there were a couple. Chardonnay, lowest is $1,000, and you can see the first big transactions, 241 tons. And when we talk Wednesday, we'll talk about how many cases of wine would that make. So multiply times 60. All right, and then as you go down, this is every Chardonnay transaction legally conducted in the Napa Valley. And it's 2 columns, so you can see we're up to 4,630. And then at the end, all right, there were 13,000 tons produced at an average selling price of $28.09. So that was the average price for Napa Chardonnay in 2017. You can see the high price was $9,000 a ton. So you can bet that was a single vineyard, high demand, high end transaction. And then if you look at that and you look at Chenin Blanc, it's like, what the hell? I could get $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a ton from Chardonnay. Why in the world would I ever plant, anything else, right? And so you can see the weighted ton over here is Pinot Gris, and the price per ton is significantly, $1,000 a ton lower on average. So as we go through, you can see Sauvignon Blanc, etc. And then we're going to get into reds. And it'll start with Cabernet Franc. And look at this. It was less than a ton, but somebody got $43,750 a ton. And then you can kind of go back and say, all right, these are really, really tiny. These have got to be highly allocated, single vineyard, stag's leap kind of things to be able to warrant these prices. That make sense?
Yeah, that's quite a price differentiation there.
It's unbelievable. And again, people just don't know this about the wine business. You think, oh, a ton of grapes, what's the big deal? Now here we're starting now with Cabernet Sauvignon and 17 tons at $1,000, and somebody got 43 tons at $1,000. And by the time you get to the bigger transaction, you're at $2,200. And then I'm going to go sort of scroll down. You see somebody had 485 tons. That's going to be a big chunk of Napa Valley Cabernet, all right, and at $3,000 a ton. And then we're going to go over here. Here's somebody that bought one transaction, $5,500 a ton at 1,431 tons. That's a lot of Cabernet, all right? So you can keep going, and 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 you can keep going and going and going and going. And notice now we're starting to hit this 11,000, 16,000. And then when we get to the end, 10 tons at $50,000 a ton. This is how this pricing differential goes. You go up to a grower and say, I want from this, your famous vineyard, and I want the name of the vineyard on there, and I need the AVA for my marketing. I can guarantee you that this wine has a selling price that is 50,000 divided by 175. I'll explain how that works in a second, all right? So this is the way this works. If 50,000 divided by 175, so this wine is selling for $285 a bottle. See if you can find out what it is. And the pricing formula for this vineyard, I sell my grapes to the highest bidder who sells their wine for the highest price per bottle times 175. And that's what these transactions are, whoops, on the right-hand side over here. So this is a new pricing schematic of competition, almost an auction, if you will. Say, look, I know you're selling to this guy. I'm going to sell the grapes from your vineyards for $300 a bottle, and then your price that you would have to pay the grower is that bottle price times 175 equals your cost per ton of grapes.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Now at the bottom here, it'll show me, here's the weighted average price per ton of Cabernet in the Napa Valley. And then here is the number of tons produced. Okay? It's very common if I'm going out and looking for grapes and I find a contract that's open from a hillside vineyard that has really, really good quality, and I say, what's for our contract, how do we arrive at the proper price? It's really, really common for me as a grower to say, my price for 2018 is going to be the Grape Crush Report average for 2017 plus 30%, and that's my price that I'll sell to you. So that's another way the pricing models work. If I've got a superior vineyard and I feel I can command a 30% premium. This is a business, y'all. And who the hell's buying Charbonneau for, here's Charbonneau down here, you know, for almost $5,000 a ton. How much can you sell that for? And what would that do to your price schematic? Later on, once you learn how to use this cost of goods calculator, I want all of you to make a $200 bottle of wine and make 1,000 cases of it. You're going to go, dang, look at all that profit. And then go try to make $2 chuck. And you're going to go, wow, I never in my life thought I would have so much respect for how the hell can they make that wine and make a profit when most wineries can't buy their bottles for $24 a case. And that's what Bronco sells $2 chuck for. It's actually $3 chuck now. So really, you know, yeah. So thanks, Daniel. This is getting us a little bit ahead of the curve. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That's great information.
Oh, it's really fun stuff. And I think I've got a New Zealand similar kind of a thing. There's other things to share. If you're in Virginia or in Oregon or making a French or Italian wine, this kind of detail can be really hard to find, and it makes doing business that much harder because there's not this transparency. Again, in the state of California, the laws are every transaction has to be recorded. That means the USDA has all this information and they can publish the report. All right. Critical thinking. So we're not going to get into this right now, but really start to think of why $1,000 versus $50,000. Why, how does this work? How does a contract work? Is it really true that if I have my own, and we'll talk about this in weeks 3 and 4, if I grow my own grapes, I'll save money and I'll have better quality, right? Maybe not necessarily. Okay, so that's what this is about. What determines the cost? Well, location, location, location. And as the value of the wine goes up in a certain region, the values of the crop goes up, the pressure. I'm in Okanagan right now, and there are peaches and apples and cherries and this wonderful fruit. And all of that's going to, if the Okanagan wines take a better position in the marketplace, if they're successful promoting the really delicious wines here in Okanagan, Canada, by the way, as wine becomes successful, all these other orchards will disappear. That's what happened in Napa. That's what happened in Bordeaux. That's what happens in wine regions, because there's no other crop that can give you the business return on investment potentially that wine grapes can. And so if you've got the location, the cost of real estate, the site preparation, all go up and rise to the point that it's impossible to afford land in Napa, and so forth. So again, it's supply and demand and the value that you can achieve. And this is why vintners groups and marketing and promotion of the region is so important. And then there's a supply chain just for the business of grapes, from when you identify a site and negotiate the real estate and plan it and lay it out and prep it and install all of this kind of stuff. And there's actually a separate workbook and calculator that does all this. So anybody who needs to know vineyard operations, let me know, and I can work with you individually on the vineyard workbook, or you can just simply go on and take a look at it, because it's pretty cool, but I'm running out of time. So this is, Washington does a very toned down version, again, looking at quantities and price per ton at more of an average level. The other thing is that the business of grapes, I mean, grape pricing is negotiable, and if there's high demand and low supply, the grape growers are in charge. But trends reverse. There's sometimes where you can literally get free grapes, and that's a whole different conversation. There are people that wait until the very last minute, and then they try to find the growers who had their contracts canceled or distressed or whatever, and that's where the $1,000 a ton most often comes from. But it's a risky game, because if you can't secure the grapes, then you won't have the production you might need to maintain your brand and distribution. So supply and demand is a really big deal. In defaulting on agreements, there's a big issue in Southern Oregon and Oregon in general, where a big producer reneged on thousands of tons of Oregon fruit and absolutely just left the growers in a lurch. And they blamed it on smoke taint, but in reality, it was very likely a shifting in supply and demand and forecasting, going, oh crap, we can't produce that much wine this year, we've got to get out of it. And the truth is somewhere between the extremes of there were smoke taint issues, but not to the level that this reneging on the contract would validate. Okay, so here's the link. This will be in the PDF for you guys. You can look at Washington, and remember that this is all a key part. And whether you're making jams and jellies, or whether you're marketing new varieties of apples, the place the flavor characteristics, the intended market all come together. And without the raw ingredient, without that fruit, you know, what are you doing? So there you go. The other thing is we'll talk about is if I'm a grower and I've got a ton of, or an acre of Chardonnay, this was done by Sonoma State a number of years ago, I can expect a gross profit of about $8,600, close to $8,700 per acre. If I made that into bulk wine, I could actually expect a long-term return on investment that's 15% higher or more. And here's what's even cooler. If I'm selling bulk wine, that's what the dark blue line is. If I'm selling grapes, that's the light blue. Ooh, what if I sold 50% grapes, and that's good from a cash flow basis, and then I made 50% into wine and sold that as bulk wine? If I did that, look how elegantly that would give me dependable, flat return on investment rather than these peaks and valleys, okay? So as we transition into production, these are the kind of decisions you've also got to weigh and look at. Do I want to vertically integrate with some or all of my grapes so that I can get a better return on investment and possibly mitigate the radical shifts in supply and demand over time, and have a much better a flat line of for my business to operate. Okay, so off we go into that. You'll get a copy of this. So I'm over time. I apologize. Any questions? Anything that comes up?
Were you going to ask us about Wednesday class?
Yeah, I'm going to do that in an email, and so I'll just ask you guys to respond to me. And a no response would be that you probably wouldn't show up. So and I love doing the live classes, so I hope we can continue this. But this Wednesday, there is no live class. Don't forget that. And then we'll figure out if we'll have the live classes continuing on the Wednesday, and we'll keep the Mondays as sort of the Q&A and the face-to-face, okay? So that's to be determined. All right, guys. Thanks, Louis. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Daniel. And I'll get this processed, and we'll get the info out and have fun.
You too. Thank you, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.